There are wounds that don't bleed. There are scars that the world never sees. And yet, they change everything. Welcome to Chill Then Conquer. Rejection didn't just hurt you. It rewired you. Not in some poetic way, where heartbreak leads to enlightenment overnight. No, this was surgical, brutal, hidden. And because no one saw the blade, no one handed you the mirror. But you're here now. And whether you arrived crawling or standing, broken or burning, it means one thing: you're ready to face it. Because this is the chapter of your life where silence speaks louder than her words, where the absence of closure becomes your fuel, and where the pain becomes proof, not of weakness, but of the depth of your capacity. Let's begin. You didn't fall apart when she left. You didn't scream, you didn't beg. You just changed. Something dimmed behind your eyes. A quiet recalibration took place, and while others saw you as handling it well, they didn't see the war behind your stillness. They didn't see how trust turned into watchfulness, how softness became suspicion, how the boy in you died quietly, in a room no one entered. Rejection, when it comes from someone you once opened your soul to, doesn't just hurt. It rewrites the architecture of who you are. And the most dangerous part? It does so silently. Most men wait for words that never come, a reason, an apology, a moment of honesty. But that moment never arrives, because her silence was the message. And if you listen closely, it wasn't empty. It was calculated, clean, efficient. Silence is the ultimate form of power in modern emotional warfare. It denies you a narrative. It denies you closure. It forces you to build the ending yourself, and most men build that ending from self-blame. What did I do wrong? Why wasn't I enough? Was I ever loved at all? And thus begins the most destructive cycle, rewriting your worth based on someone else's inability to love properly. She didn't just leave. She branded you, not with fire, with doubt. Now every future connection is filtered through that mark. You flinch when someone gets too close. You withhold when someone opens up. You retreat because somewhere in your gut, you've accepted the idea that you're replaceable. But here's the truth she never told you. You weren't rejected because you were unworthy. You were rejected because she never saw clearly in the first place. Or worse, she did and feared it. Not every woman leaves because of lack. Some leave because of pressure. Your depth made her feel shallow. Your presence highlighted her chaos. Your loyalty revealed her patterns. So she vanished, without explanation, without honor. And now you carry the ghost of that unanswered exit. Most men interpret rejection as a closed door. But what if it's something else entirely? What if rejection wasn't a block, but a corridor? What if it was the call to step away from seeking into becoming? The modern man has been trained to seek validation, trained to perform, to please, to apologize for his masculinity in order to be accepted. But when she rejected you, she unknowingly did you a favor. She forced you back into yourself. And now, here you are, standing at the threshold. Behind you, the world you tried to make work, the bending, the overgiving, the softening, just to be loved. Ahead of you, the man you were always meant to be. If you ignore this moment, if you numb the pain with distractions, if you pretend it didn't change you, if you rush into another fix, you'll miss the whole reason for the rejection in the first place. Because life doesn't waste pain, and when it's deep, it's sacred. It means you're being invited into transformation, but most will run from it. They'll laugh it off, date again too soon, chase shallow comfort, drown in dopamine. And years from now, they'll still carry her in their chest. Not as love, but as unprocessed self-doubt. That won't be you. You're going to face it. What hurts the most is not her leaving, it's the shattering of what you believed she was. You didn't just lose a woman, you lost a story, one where she was the one where your sacrifices would be seen, one where loyalty meant longevity. But that story wasn't real. She wasn't who you imagined, and maybe she never was. So what you're grieving is a phantom. But now the fog is lifting. The illusion is cracking, and in its place, clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes from pain. The kind that changes the structure of your soul. Strange, isn't it? How the deepest pain becomes the deepest power. But only if you let it. Only if you sit with it. Only if you stop blaming her or yourself. Only if you stop needing answers that will never come. Rejection broke your illusion so that the real work could begin. And now it's time. You're not here to be chosen. You're here to become. We descend into the hidden curriculum of pain, where you'll finally see what life has been trying to teach you through every unanswered message, every sudden silence, every night she left you wondering. Stay close. This is where the real transformation begins. She didn't disappear. She just changed the way she showed up. Her presence turned into strategy. Her words, once warm and open, now carried double meanings, silent delays, and invisible knives. What used to be direct, the laughter, the messages, the "I miss you," became something else. Controlled, calculated, cold. And yet she's still here. Still watching, still responding. But something in the rhythm is gone. The music between your souls, quieted. Now every word feels like a test, every pause a measurement. Not of your love, but of your weakness. She's not seeking connection anymore. She's checking to see if you're still under her spell. This is the second chain, the phase where her attention becomes performance. Where her hello doesn't mean presence, it means pressure. Where she speaks only to gauge your reaction. And if you're still chasing, you've already failed. At first glance, everything looks normal. She texts back, she smiles, she even says she cares. But if you listen closer, you'll hear the gap. That empty space between her words and her energy, between what she says and how she truly feels. She's not speaking from the heart anymore. She's watching, calculating, playing a role. Because now your reaction matters more to her than your presence. This is the shift most men miss. They think the warmth is still real, just hidden. They chase it, beg for it. Try to remind her of who she used to be. But that woman, she's gone. And what stands before you now is a test, a reflection of how attached you still are. Pay attention not to her words, but to their weight. Do they pull you closer or do they make you uncertain? Does her "I'm just busy" calm you, or does it leave a knot in your chest? Rejection no longer wears the mask of silence. It wears the mask of ambiguity. She won't block you, she'll breadcrumb you. She'll give you just enough to keep your mind confused, your heart guessing, and your ego attached. That's the mirror, not of her emotions, but of yours. How much of your identity still clings to her responses? How much of your confidence still depends on her tone? How much of your peace still rises and falls based on her attention? Every text, every delay, every vague message is a reflection, not of her desire, but of your dependency. This is not about love anymore. It's about leverage. And leverage doesn't look like manipulation at first. It looks like small things. She delays her replies just enough to keep you wondering. She compliments you, then pulls away. She makes plans, then cancels without guilt. She asks questions, but never gives real answers. She's playing the game of emotional economics. Each act is an investment, not in connection, but in control. She wants to see what you're willing to tolerate, how far you'll bend, how long you'll wait. Because in this stage, the one who cares less wins. And if you're still chasing, still proving, still trying, you're already losing. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This isn't just about heartbreak. This is about becoming unshakable. The coldness in her voice, the uncertainty in her messages, the delay in her attention, these aren't punishments. They are your forge, Your chance to become a man whose worth does not rise or fall with another's affection. Your chance to feel rejection and still remain silent, still remain sovereign. Your chance to stop explaining, stop chasing, stop proving, because the man she tests will always be the man she never truly respects. But the man who watches, pauses, withdraws into his own becoming, that man doesn't play in the arena of her approval. He outgrows it. This is the moment you turn. You don't need to call her out. You don't need to confront her strategy. You don't need to ask, "What's wrong?" again. You already know what's wrong. You were meant to wake up here, to stand in this fire of subtle rejection and not flinch, to recognize that your need for her warmth was the real prison. The test was never about her attention. It was about your attachment. You pass when you stop playing. You win when you stop needing. You ascend when you stop explaining your silence. She'll feel the shift. And here's what you'll notice. The moment you stop giving her your reaction, she'll give you her curiosity. The moment your energy turns inward, she'll feel the absence of your obsession. Because silence from a man who used to chase is louder than 1,000 confessions. She'll test again, with subtle messages, with vague warmth, with half-open doors. But you won't walk through them. Because now you see them for what they are: mirrors, games, traps, and you have outgrown them all. But you're already becoming. This is no longer about her. This is about you. Her silence, her attention, her games. They were the beginning of your transformation. You now understand the hidden architecture of her behavior, the psychology behind her delay, the power of your non-response. You are no longer chasing clarity from her. You are becoming the clarity she can no longer disturb. Why rejection wasn't an accident. It was the strategy all along. Stay with us. The next fire will show you the truth you were never meant to see. You thought rejection was random. You thought it was bad timing, bad luck, or your lack of something. Looks, words, money, confidence. But now, let's break that illusion. Rejection wasn't a detour in your story. It was the strategy. The blade she chose, not to kill you, but to shape you. And unless you stand firm in this mirror, you'll keep chasing shadows that were designed to disappear. Let's begin. This is how you soften the blow. This is what you tell yourself in the dark. She wasn't ready. She was scared. She had trauma. But none of that explains why she laughed at his jokes the same week she ghosted yours. None of that explains why her not ready for a relationship ended with her in someone else's arms a month later. You were never the victim of chance. You were the test subject of a method. Understand this. Rejection, for some, is not just instinct, it's intent. It's used like a filter, a sifter, a gate. Women, consciously or unconsciously, use rejection not to discard but to measure. Not to escape, but to see how deep your roots go. Do you beg? Do you explain? Do you fall apart? They watch. Do you hold your ground? Do you disappear into silence? Do you build in the shadows? They remember. The truth? The rejection wasn't the test. Your reaction was. Because if a man falls apart after a woman leaves, he was never a man she could trust with anything real. If you beg, you show you are hoping to be chosen, not becoming someone undeniable. If you rage, you reveal immaturity. If you chase, you show weakness. If you vanish, but rise, you enter legend. This is the mirror, not the one you see yourself in, but the one she used to reflect your true core. Rejection forces you to look at your emotional neediness, at your dependency, at your illusion of control, and most of all, at your expectation to be rewarded for good behavior. You were polite, kind, consistent. But love is not a job you apply for. It's a fire you either ignite or you don't, and no amount of niceness turns sparks into flame. Sometimes a woman leaves to wound you, but sometimes she leaves to wake you. Not out of cruelty, but because your soul was soft, because your spine was bending, because you forgot the code of men. Become or be forgotten. She was the storm, you were the house. If it crumbled, it wasn't her fault. It was your foundation. One day, if you do this right, you'll look back and not only forgive her, you'll thank her, not for the pain, but for the mirror, for being the one who exposed your illusion, for being the doorway you had to be pushed through so you could see what kind of man was waiting on the other side of destruction. And on that day, you'll realize rejection was your rebirth. Do not explain. Silence is your sword. Don't justify, don't defend. Let her feel your absence without the noise of your pain. Rebuild the temple, your body, your mind, your world. Start training again, not for her, but for the God inside you. Burn the script. Whatever story you wrote about your future with her, destroy it. Write a new one, with no name attached. Just a mission, why she disappeared. Exactly when you started feeling everything. It wasn't random. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It was timed. Right when you opened up. Right when you started trusting her. Right when you thought, this is different. That's when she pulled the plug, left the message on read, changed her tone, disappeared. And now you're stuck asking the question, why now? Let's answer it. The disappearance was not chaos, it was design. Most men believe silence from a woman means she's unsure or scared or overwhelmed. But what if she vanished not because of what she felt, but because of what you started to feel? There's a moment in every dynamic where the balance shifts, where the woman realizes he's too invested, he's starting to fall, he's now the one chasing. That's when the void begins. There's a curve in attraction. In the beginning, women are curious, alert, even obsessed. But as your emotional intensity rises, if hers does not rise at the same rate, she starts to retreat. Why? Because emotional imbalance is unattractive to the feminine, not always because she's cruel, but because something primal inside her wants to feel that you are still the mountain, that your center is untouched by her presence. If your center collapses as soon as she touches it, she disappears to preserve the polarity. She disappeared because you arrived. Yes, you arrived emotionally. You stopped playing the game, you started feeling her as something real, and the moment you got honest with yourself, she got distant. This is not madness. This is a test. She wants to see, will you crumble because she left, or will you become even more powerful because she did? When she goes silent, stop trying to decode her. Start decoding you. Ask, what part of me needed her attention to feel stable? Why did her withdrawal feel like death? What part of me believed this time it would be different? That pain isn't punishment, it's instruction, it's sacred training, because if you can remain still in the void, you're no longer under her spell. Why they pull back after intimacy? You might say, but we got so close, she opened up to me, we shared everything. Exactly. And that closeness triggered a deeper feminine reflex. Safety check. Because when she sees you emotionally exposed, she unconsciously checks, is he still strong? Does he still have purpose beyond me? Can he walk away from me if he has to? If the answer is no, she steps back. Not always to hurt you, sometimes to give you a chance to prove that your soul isn't fragile. Do nothing. Not passively, but powerfully. Not because you're scared, but because you're grounded. Let her feel the gravity of your silence. Reclaim the center. Stop watching her stories. Stop waiting for a message. Return to the forge, the gym, the mission, the silence. Hold the paradox. You can feel everything and still remain untouched. The pain is real, but you don't become it. This is the warrior's discipline. When a woman sees too much of your heart too soon, she instinctively senses the power shift. And unless you're a man who holds his frame, no matter what, she pulls back. It's not always evil. Sometimes it's biological, but often it's strategic. Because if she withdraws and you chase, she wins. She becomes the prize again, and you become predictable. But if she withdraws and you stay still, unmoved, now she has to wonder, did I just lose something real? That's the game behind the silence. What you must never do again. Never react to silence with more words. Never break your stillness to make her feel better. Never assume her leaving was your fault. Never let a woman feel that your sense of self depends on her return. Because if she senses that, she'll never respect you again. Her silence taught you more than her words ever could. It revealed your need. It exposed your hope. It showed you exactly where your power leaks. And now, you can seal those cracks. You can become that man who no longer needs anyone to stay in order to stand tall. The man whose silence isn't an echo of pain, but the sound of inner power. Prepare for the next. There's a moment every man remembers, not because it was loud, but because it was silent. A gaze that lingered too long, a text that went unanswered, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You didn't know it then, but something ancient had just been wagered. Not your pride, your soul. We're not here to pity you. We're here to open your eyes to the game you were never told you were playing. Because there's a secret every strong man eventually uncovers. You didn't fall for her. You fell for the role she made you play. No words were signed, no deal was spoken. But somewhere between her needing your presence and punishing your absence, a contract was drawn in silence. You gave time. You gave loyalty. You gave understanding. But you never asked the price. And here's the twist. She never asked you to give. She made you offer. That's the invisible wager. You thought you were leading, but you were proving. You believed love was about showing up. She believed love was about seeing who wouldn't stop showing up, even when being dismissed. Rejection didn't happen once. It happened slowly, strategically, and all the while you were bidding more of yourself. Men don't trade in words. We trade in effort, devotion, and sacrifice. But what happens when those offerings are made to someone who never brought anything to the altar? You become a temple to someone who never believed in worship. You see, brother, you weren't weak. You were invested. And there's a pain worse than heartbreak, the realization that your loyalty became your leash. She didn't trap you. She just allowed you to give endlessly. She let you believe that if you were just enough, then maybe she'd be consistent. She'd see your worth. She'd stop running. But here's what no one tells you. The chase was the reward. And once she had your certainty, your mystery died. The moment she knew you'd do anything to keep her, she no longer needed to keep you. Because her power wasn't in presence, it was in absence weaponized. Let's be honest. You gave her more than time and attention. You gave her your becoming. Your goals slowed down. Your mind spiraled. Your days started orbiting her moods, her silence, her replies. And in that quiet transfer of attention, something sacred was handed over. Your center. You stopped being the mountain. You became the weather. And a man who becomes weather is no longer feared. He's forecasted, predicted, and ultimately, ignored. The silence wasn't just hers. You stopped asking yourself the questions that matter. What is she actually giving me? Do I feel respected in this? Is this reciprocal, or am I just useful? But you were too far in. You'd invested too much. So you clung to hope instead of truth. And brother, hope is a drug sold by those who fear your awakening. Because the moment you wake up, you stop playing. Now, here's the shift. The moment you realize what was truly wagered, you can take it back. Not from her, but from the part of you that gave without self-respect. Because reclaiming your center isn't loud. It's not revenge. It's not posting quotes online or pretending you don't care. It's getting so silent that your presence starts to feel like a loss to those who once took it for granted. It's standing still, not because you're stuck, but because you no longer chase what collapses in your grip. From now on, you don't give blindly. You don't prove. You receive first, discern second, give third. Because you're not here to audition for love. You are here to embody it, for yourself first. So the next time a woman enters your life, she will either rise to meet your standards or fade before she gets close. Not because you're cold, but because you remember the price of the invisible wager, and you've decided, never again. Stay with us, because we enter the stage of the ascent, where silence is no longer recovery, it's power. There comes a time when silence is no longer a reaction, but a sacred declaration. Not to hurt her, not to win her back, but to protect what's left of you. This is the sacred withdrawal, the point at which you stop scattering your power into every glance, every text, every over-explained emotion, every attempt to be understood. Because you realize the more they knew about you, the easier it was to break you. So you vanish from the battlefield not out of fear, but precision. You pull back, not as retreat, but as restoration. Not everyone deserves access to your soul. Not every woman should hold the blueprint to your undoing. She thought she was watching you break, but you were studying the structure of your leaks. And one day, you started sealing them, one by one. No more justifying yourself. No more checking the phone at 2 a.m. No more seeing signs where there was only silence. You stopped leaking energy through what you couldn't control and returned to the only domain you ever owned, your inner citadel. That's where this chain begins, where men stop bleeding for women who never brought bandages, where you stop auditioning for a place in someone else's chaos, where your withdrawal becomes a spiritual act of war. Because there's a level of detachment that feels like rage to the world, but to you, it feels like peace. They don't get it. They never will. That's what makes it sacred. You stop showing up in places where your presence was once tolerated, and you reappear in spaces where your absence is felt like a myth. The kind of myth that makes them whisper, "He doesn't chase anymore," because he's not even in the same dimension. This is about that shift, from reactive to reserved, from explainable to enigmatic, from emotionally available to divinely untouchable. It's about becoming the man who no longer overfunctions just to keep broken dynamics alive. The man who stops performing for people who couldn't even see his soul when it was wide open. It's about no longer rewarding inconsistency with loyalty, because now, your silence is sacred. Not a manipulation, not a punishment, not a tactic. A boundary. You stopped leaking energy into black holes pretending to be relationships. And now, you are a fortress. You are no longer flinching at her distance because you've built your own. And she can feel it. That chill in your tone. That fire in your eyes. That unfamiliar stillness in your demeanor. You are no longer moved by breadcrumbs, no longer impressed by presence after long absences, no longer responding to the push-pull chaos she used to weaponize. You've cut the circuit. Now she's the one trying to remember what it felt like when you still bled freely. But the gates are closed, not out of spite, but wisdom. There's no more explanation. No more trying to meet her halfway across a battlefield she created. You are done. You've reclaimed your power by removing your audience, because silence is no longer a gap in the conversation. It's the shield of your rebirth. This isn't detachment out of defeat. It's divinity, through discipline. And the next time she thinks of you, if she ever does, she'll feel that sacred silence like a blade. Because this is the chapter where you no longer leak, you lead. You've walked through fire, not to prove anything, but because it was the only way forward. And now, there's no smoke left, only the crown, cold, heavy, quiet. There's no applause here, no warm hands waiting to pull you back into softness, just silence, and the faint echo of who you used to be, calling from below. But you don't answer anymore. Because you know what that voice leads to. Old habits, old longings, old stories of what if, and none of them are yours now. You've outgrown the man who needed her. You've surpassed the man who bled for love that never saw him. You've become what the silence tried to break, and you're still standing. No, not standing, ruling over your own mind, your urges, your attention, your time. Not a tyrant, but a king of self. Because power is not about domination. It's about containment. Holding everything, the rage, the grief, the hunger, the ache, without spilling it into the world like a boy trying to be seen. That's why the crown is cold. It was never made for warmth. It was made for the man who no longer needs to explain, to chase, or to perform. This is not about getting her back. It's about never giving yourself away again. You are not the man who begged. You are not the man who texted 17 times. You are not the man who tried to prove his worth to someone who fed on doubt. You are something else now. You are the one who disappeared and came back unrecognizable. Harder, quieter, clearer. And every step forward is now guided by your silence, not your wounds. This is the end of the game, not because you lost, but because you finally realized you were playing beneath you. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. Let them miss you in secret and pretend they don't. You owe no response, only presence, and even that is sacred now. So walk on, brother, and if your path ever gets heavy, return here, to the words that reminded you who you are, to the chains that reforged you, to the silence that made you sovereign. And when you're ready, subscribe, because this isn't the end, it's the initiation. We go deeper. We go darker. We go higher. This is Chill Then Conquer, where the silence becomes strength, the fall becomes fire, and the man is reborn. We'll see you in the next one. Subscribe, and return when the world forgets who you are, because we never will.